They came without warning. The skies over New Darwin cracked open like the shell of a rotten egg, and out spilled the Empire's finest, tall, armored beasts bred for war, their ships humming with alien technology. The people of Earth had always known something was out there, but we were too busy tearing each other apart to prepare. Or so the Empire thought. Their scouts had studied our wars, our history, our failures. They watched us kill each other in deserts and cities, slaughtering for oil, power, religion. They saw division, chaos, and weakness. What they didn't understand, what they never could, was that humans weren't weak because we fought. We were strong because we never stopped fighting. I was in the wreckage of Pittsburgh when the first wave hit. Not much left of the city by then. Years of internal collapse had left it hollowed, barely breathing. I was just another grunt, another ex-soldier trying to stay fed. Name doesn't matter. I've buried it deep with the bodies of the Empire's warriors. What mattered was survival, and we'd had a hell of a lot of practice with that. The Empire's warriors looked like gods when they landed, 8 feet tall, plated in shimmering armor, their language a static screech of superiority. They gave no warnings, no offers of peace, just a single, blaring message translated through every screen. You are unfit to rule yourselves. Submit or be annihilated. Most governments bent the knee within hours. Cowards. They'd seen their people starving, nations crumbling, and thought submission meant survival. But the rest of us, the forgotten, the unwanted, the angry, knew better. We had no nations, no flags, no presidents left worth a damn. We had nothing to lose, and that made us dangerous. The resistance didn't start with a speech. It started with a shovel to an Empire soldier's throat. Some drunk in what used to be Detroit decided he wasn't going to kneel, and when he took one of those giants down with nothing but raw rage and rusted steel, something shifted. We saw it. We felt it. The fear started to bleed out of us, replaced by something sharper. Hate, maybe. Pride, definitely. Whatever it was, it spread like wildfire. They sent their best, their elite shock troopers into the worst parts of Earth, expecting us to beg. We laughed in their faces. I led a cell out of the ruins of Pennsylvania. 5 men, 2 women, all killers in some form or another. We didn't wear uniforms, didn't fly banners. Our weapons were stolen, broken, patched together with wire and duct tape. But we knew how to fight dirty. The Empire didn't. We set traps. We hunted in packs. They had drones. We had IEDs made from trash and fuel. They had armor. We had bullets laced with acid. They had strategy. We had rage. They called us insects. They called us diseased. I watched a commander scream that we were beneath their notice, right before one of my men shoved a pipe bomb into his breathing vent. The explosion lit up the night like fireworks. By month 2, the skies weren't so full of their ships anymore, but they didn't stop. The Empire doubled down. More troops, heavier weapons, giant siege walkers that could flatten a building with one step. They thought brute force would do what fear hadn't. It was almost cute. They didn't understand the one rule of Earth. You push hard enough, and even the broken rise up. They didn't expect a species that had survived extinction-level events, genocide, nukes, and their own stupidity to suddenly unite. But we did. Not all of us, but enough. In the silence between battles, we'd listen to their transmissions. They couldn't understand why we kept fighting. "They are primitives," one voice said. "Why do they not submit?" That's when we smiled. Because they came thinking they were gods, and we were about to show them how humanity deals with false gods. The next few weeks turned cities into graveyards, not just for us, but for them. We didn't have air superiority. We didn't have fleets or EMPs or coordinated global defenses. What we had was instinct, hate, and a level of endurance the Empire had never witnessed. Every street became a trap. every sewer a tunnel of death. The Empire thought it could use its towering mech suits and thermal scanners to flush us out, but they forgot something important. Humans lived in filth. We thrived in it. We'd been crawling through garbage and breathing in poison for centuries. Radiation, chemical waste, viral outbreaks. These weren't war crimes to us. They were just Tuesday. I remember one night in the hollowed remains of Atlanta. The Empire had deployed a full Hunter-class unit, 10-foot apex killers with scanning drones, mounted cannons, and AI-assisted reflexes. They marched like death itself, tearing down buildings to root out resistance. We were down to 6, half-starved, out of ammo, morale hanging by a thread. But one of the kids in our group, some wiry mechanic from old Mexico, had rigged the entire subway line with enough C4 to vaporize a freight train. We waited until they entered the tunnel, then sealed the exits and lit the fuse. The blast thundered through the earth like a god's heartbeat. Rubble and metal, concrete and limbs, it all shot skyward in a plume of dust and fire. We found pieces of that Hunter unit scattered 2 blocks away. Their elite troopers, those arrogant, gene-edited bastards, were just meat once we took their toys away. But this wasn't just about traps or clever tricks. It became psychological. We started broadcasting messages over their own frequencies. Old human war songs, laughter, sometimes just the sounds of their own dying soldiers screaming. It broke them. You could hear the panic creeping into their voices during command calls. They started sending in their lower classes first, expendables, slaves from conquered planets. Their so-called Empire of Unity? Nothing but fear and control. And when those lower-class conscripts saw how we fought, some of them began defecting. I met one, name unpronounceable, looked like a walking jellyfish wrapped in armor. We called him Ribs because his chest looked like a cracked xylophone. He turned on his handlers during a skirmish, took 3 plasma bolts to the back to warn us of an ambush. He died grinning, a human expression he'd learned from us. The tide didn't turn all at once. It came in blood, sweat, and betrayal. For every Empire soldier we killed, they glassed entire neighborhoods in retaliation. Their orbiters could incinerate cities from the sky. We had to keep moving, keep hiding. But that's when the worst mistake of their campaign happened. They bombed New Omaha, not a major city anymore, just a big refugee camp full of women, kids, old men, nothing strategic, no weapons stockpile. They hit it anyway, burned it to ash. Live feed showed mothers clutching blackened babies, skin melting like candle wax. I watched it with a hand on my rifle, and something in me snapped. We weren't just resisting after that. We were hunting. You know that old saying about cornered animals? Humans are cornered animals with nuclear scars and thousands of years of hate in their bones. We don't fight fair. We fight to win. So we stopped playing defense, started taking the fight to them. My squad tripled in size in a week. Half were ex-cons, others were former military, and a few were just angry civilians who didn't care if they died as long as they took one of the bastards with them. We hit supply lines, sabotaged drop points, even managed to hijack one of their smaller ships. Piloting it was hell. It responded to neural input, not human controls, but we figured out how to crash it into one of their mobile command units. The explosion leveled 6 city blocks. Worth it. Every victory cost us, though. We didn't have medbays or stims. We had duct tape, alcohol, and pain. If someone lost a leg, they either bled out or learned to crawl. We buried our own in holes we dug with our bare hands. No speeches, just dirt and silence. But for every one of us who fell, 5 more rose in their place. It wasn't just the fighting. It was the cause. That mattered more than guns. Humans had spent decades feeling powerless, oppressed by their own governments, drowned in poverty, distracted by petty politics and fake wars. But now they had a real enemy. and nothing unites humanity faster than someone else trying to put a boot on our neck. The Empire tried to adapt, switched tactics. They started cloning some of our own soldiers, cheap imitations using human DNA scraped off battlefields. But clones don't have soul. They don't have rage. You could see it in their eyes, lifeless, empty, like machines wearing flesh. We slaughtered them without a second thought. Even the captured ones didn't beg for mercy. They just stood there, waiting for orders that never came. One of my men, Big Red, snapped when he saw a clone wearing his brother's face, gutted it with a serrated bayonet, and didn't stop stabbing even after it stopped moving. We didn't judge him. Hell, we probably all would have done the same. By the 4th month, something unexpected happened. The Empire started pulling back. Not retreating, just hesitating. They'd underestimated us so badly at the start that now they didn't trust their own intel. Their supply chains stretched thin. Their morale cracked. Their commanders fought each other in hushed transmissions. We intercepted a message from one of their fleet captains saying, "The humans are infected with something. It's not disease, it's something worse. They don't fear us." Damn right we didn't. But fear's a funny thing. It shifts. We weren't fearless. We were just angry. That anger became something bigger than us. Across the planet, other cells were rising. China's underground coal cities lit up with guerrilla fighters. Africa's war-torn zones turned into war hubs. South America? They started launching their own counterattacks using ancient tech and black market gear. The Empire realized, too late, that Earth wasn't one nation. It was a planet full of predators in waiting. That's when they sent the Judicator. Not a soldier, not a battalion, a single being, their executioner, a creature bred for planetary-level slaughter. 9 feet tall, wrapped in kinetic shielding, born in the heart of a dying star, according to their myths. It landed outside what was left of Chicago and issued a challenge. Any human who could defeat it in combat would earn the right to negotiate surrender. That thing killed 20 fighters in the first 10 minutes, tore them apart with invisible blades, vaporized the rest with shockwaves. It stood over their bodies and laughed. I didn't wait for orders. I just walked out with a pack of grenades and my father's old revolver. Every part of me screamed that this was suicide, but some part of me needed to face it. Not for glory, not even for revenge, for proof. Proof that we weren't beneath them. Proof that even if we lost, we went down swinging. The fight wasn't fair, never is. I was faster, but it was smarter, stronger. It read my movements like a book. But pain is a teacher, and I'd studied under it for years. I let it break my ribs, dislocate my shoulder, but I planted every bomb I brought with me. The last one? I shoved that straight into the bastard's throat while it was monologuing about evolution and superiority. I smiled, just like we always did, and pulled the pin. The Judicator exploded in a cloud of sparks, gore, and smoke. I woke up 3 days later in a rubble-strewn bunker with half my face wrapped in gauze and the rest of my body stitched together like Frankenstein. But when I looked around, I saw something I hadn't seen in months. Hope. They told me the blast had triggered a massive uprising. Word spread fast. The unkillable warrior had fallen. They didn't know my name. They just called me the man who smiled. Good. Names don't matter anymore. Not mine, not theirs. Only the message does. They sent their best. We smiled, then we crushed them. They called it a tactical pause, a regroup, a moment for the Empire to evaluate resistance vectors and redefine planetary dominance protocols. In simpler terms, they were bleeding, and they didn't know how to stop it. We had cut too deep, too fast. And for the first time in what must have been 1,000 years, the Empire was afraid of losing a war. It started in the sky. We noticed fewer patrol ships, fewer low-altitude scans. The drones, those buzzards that hovered day and night, started falling from the sky, either abandoned or malfunctioning. Whatever AI ran them must have started glitching, Or maybe even it couldn't process the madness Earth had become. We weren't just killing soldiers now. We were winning minds. Entire platoons were going rogue. Empire sympathizers who'd been installed in early stages were either hunted down or defecting. I got word from an old hacker in East Berlin that the Empire's communication grid had been breached by a 10-year-old using scavenged tech and rage as motivation. They hijacked the main propaganda stream and flooded it with footage from Omaha. The charred bodies, the screaming children, the ash-blown winds. They didn't blur it. Let the galaxy see who their so-called superior species really were. And something strange happened after that. Other planets started reaching out. Whispers, mostly. Garbled transmissions from enslaved species. Rebel signals in dead frequencies. At first we thought it was a trick, but one by one, they confirmed. Earth's resistance had lit a spark. The galaxy was watching and waiting. I should have felt pride, hope. Instead, all I felt was more anger. Because we weren't finished. The Empire still had its claws in our cities, its boot on the neck of half the population. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that judicator laughing. I heard the buzz of alien ships and the cries of dying civilians. And I knew we hadn't hurt them enough. Not yet. So we started planning our next move. Not just to fight, but to end it. Permanently. We'd heard rumors of a central relay point, a massive command spire the Empire had erected in what used to be Colorado. The Rockies had been flattened during their initial descent, turned into slag and steel. That spire? It was the nerve center. All ground operations, all command feeds, all orbital drops came through it. Without that tower, their infrastructure would collapse like wet paper. Of course, it was suicide. They'd fortified it with everything. Automated defense grids, aerial drones, genetically engineered watchdogs that didn't need sleep, didn't feel pain, didn't bleed. No one had gotten close. Until we did. We didn't bring an army. Just 32 volunteers. Every one of them had lost everything. Parents, wives, kids, homes. Some had nothing left but their hatred, and that was more than enough. We spent weeks trekking across hostile ground, crawling through irradiated zones, dodging patrols. We used old mining tunnels, broken sewer lines, ancient smuggling routes. Sometimes we had to carve our own path, through mountain, flesh, and bone. It wasn't noble. We weren't heroes. We were just angry men with nothing left to break. Halfway there, we ran into a blockade, one of their heavy field units. Mechs, 12 stories tall, designed for siege warfare, not recon. But they spotted us anyway, opened fire with plasma mortars that turned rock into vapor. We lost 7. Just gone. 1 second there, next second scattered across the dirt like ash. We didn't cry, we didn't stop. We buried their gear and moved on. The last stretch was the worst. Open terrain, no cover, a field of bones and melted tech where a city used to be. The spire loomed ahead, black against the night sky, humming with power. It was alive, almost, pulsing with the breath of every alien atrocity that had touched our world. We waited until midnight. Then we ran. No stealth. No tricks. Just a straight, screaming charge across open land, guns blazing, throats raw. They tried to stop us, of course. The sky lit up with fire. Drones screamed down like banshees. But we kept moving. Some of us on foot, some on stolen bikes. One guy, Tanner, came riding a gutted mech like it was a bull, firing an Empire cannon hacked into manual mode. He took out a guard post before his torso got liquefied. We didn't stop to mourn. We blew a hole in the outer wall and poured through like a damn virus. Inside was chaos. Empire soldiers, techs, analysts, they panicked. They'd never expected humans to breach this deep. They fought back, of course, viciously, but they were used to clean war. Precision strikes, predictable tactics. We were anything but. We shot. We stabbed. We bit. Burned and screamed. I saw a guy rip an alien's jaw off with his bare hands. Another threw himself on a plasma grenade just to keep the rest of us moving. I personally emptied 3 clips into a high-ranking officer and then beat him with his own breathing tank. No mercy. No surrender. We reached the control core just before dawn. It was pulsing, warm, wired directly to a floating orb that transmitted real-time data to the orbital command fleet. This was it. The heart. The Empire's eye. I pulled out my last charge, a handmade bomb, crafted with stolen fusion cells and the trigger mechanism from a broken toaster. I set it. Then we waited. The aliens flooded in minutes later, overwhelmed us, guns to our heads. My second-in-command got her skull crushed in front of me. I thought I was next, but I just smiled. And when they asked me why, I said 2 words. Check the core. They looked. Too late. The explosion didn't just take out the spire. It sent a signal, an overload pulse that corrupted every connected system on the planet. Satellites went blind. Mechs fell still. Orbital relays blinked into black. Entire fleets lost command control. The whole planet-wide system collapsed in under an hour. And the best part? It wasn't just us. Simultaneous detonations hit in 10 other cities. Coordinated, global, guerrilla warfare taken to the level of surgical annihilation. We didn't just beat them. We humiliated them. By the time I crawled out of the rubble, half my ribs shattered and one eye blind, the sky was burning. Empire ships were crashing. Panicked troops were retreating. Some were even begging. And I realized something. This war wasn't about survival anymore. It was about revenge. And we were just getting started. The skies never turned blue again. After the spire fell, the world looked different. Not just physically, though that was true too, with entire cities turned to twisted metal and radioactive dust, but in spirit. Something changed in us. The fear was gone, replaced with something colder, sharper, the kind of hate that settles into your bones and doesn't burn out. We'd cracked their infrastructure, disarmed their nerve center. But we hadn't broken the Empire. Not yet. They still had fleets in orbit, still had holdout zones where their elite units hunkered down, trying to figure out how a planet of what they called feral bipeds had outmaneuvered their god-tier tech. What they didn't get, what they never got, was that humans don't fight to win. Not always. Sometimes we fight because we have nothing left. And when you fight like that, you're capable of horrors no strategist can predict. We were turning into something else. Less soldiers, more executioners. After Colorado, Command tried to contact me. What was left of it, anyway. Some underground network out in the Balkans, a mix of ex-generals, resistance techs, and some scary people from places even I didn't want to know about. They wanted a structured offensive now. Organize the chaos. Build a real front. I told them no. I didn't come this far to wear another uniform. Instead, we went dark. My squad, what was left of it, and a few of the newer blood, 14 of us, all killers, none of us clean. We didn't report to anyone, didn't take orders. We went rogue. And we started hunting. Our targets were the holdout commanders, the ones hiding in alien sanctuaries built from stolen steel and human bones. They thought we wouldn't come for them. That with their ships still guarding the sky, and their drones still patrolling the waste, they could bunker down and wait for reinforcements. They were wrong. The first one we hit was in the ruins of Johannesburg. He called himself Executor Varn. A title, not a name. 9-foot mutant, armored like a tank, surrounded by elite guards and a kill zone laced with sonic mines. We lost 2 getting through the perimeter. Another bled out before we could cauterize the stump. Didn't matter. We breached the bunker, blew through the guards, and cornered him in his command throne. He stood, all arrogance and ancient bloodline, and told us we were lesser creatures. That we should feel honored to die in the presence of an evolutionary superior. I shot him in both knees and then let my men take turns. We didn't leave a body. After that, they stopped broadcasting names, started hiding deeper. But we had eyes. Friends in the shadows. Former slaves of the Empire. Some weren't even human. Doesn't matter. The ones who were suffering saw something in us. Not hope, not salvation. Vengeance. That's what Earth had become now. A beacon for vengeance. Across the stars, other rebel signals started spiking. Encrypted transmissions calling us the First Flame. They were watching us burn, and they wanted to join. But we didn't wait. Our next hit was an orbital cannon site in what used to be Alaska. A towering beast of a structure, angled to fire plasma lances at any vessel trying to leave orbit. Problem was, it also held control over one of the last functioning Empire prisons, Camp Delta, a place where they kept human prisoners in cryo-suspension. Experiments, failures, dissidents. We had to take it. Getting in meant going through the cold. Sub-zero temperatures, high wind, open terrain, and patrol drones. We wrapped ourselves in thermal suits made from scrap and animal hide. Smelled like death, but it kept us warm. We snuck in during a snowstorm, covered by white and rage. The guards weren't expecting a ground assault. Their defenses were aimed skyward. By the time they realized we were inside, we'd already started the release sequence. The prison held over 3,000 humans. Most had been asleep for months. Years, maybe. Some woke screaming. Some didn't wake at all. But those who could move joined us. One man, bald, scarred, covered in old tattoos from a gang that didn't even exist anymore, walked up to me after we unshackled him. Didn't say a word. Just nodded. He killed 10 Empire soldiers that night with nothing but a rusted blade and spite. We took the cannon, turned it on the Empire's orbital station, fried it in one shot, watched it spin out of control and break apart in the atmosphere. Fire rained down over the Pacific for 2 days. They stopped sending reinforcements after that. Not because they couldn't, because they were scared of what they'd find. By month 6, the Empire had lost 65% of their ground forces, 80% of their orbital support. Commanders were defecting, self-destructing, or vanishing without a trace. Some started broadcasting surrender requests, not to Earth's governments, but directly to the resistance. They wanted a deal. We gave them bullets. We found another judicator unit, this one stationed in a desert zone in South Asia. Same model as the first, same smug voice, same posturing, same arrogance. It issued a challenge, said it would grant mercy to our species if we could entertain it in battle. So we brought it children. Children who had watched their parents burn. Kids who couldn't speak because of what they'd seen. We gave them knives, and we stood back. The judicator didn't stand a chance. We didn't record it, didn't broadcast it. Some things aren't for propaganda. Some things are just for the dirt. You'd think that would be enough. But it never is. Revenge feeds on itself. The more you burn, the colder your soul becomes. We were winning, crushing them. But somewhere in that fire, we'd lost something. One night, I walked into an old church, half collapsed, stained with blood and alien tech. Inside, one of my men had strung up an Empire defector. Not a soldier, just a translator. Said he used to help process human prisoners. Claimed he had no choice. My man had gutted him anyway, hung him from the rafters as a warning. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to sickness. I didn't stop him, but I didn't join in. We were monsters now, but we were ours, and we were almost done. By the time the 7th month came around, we stopped calling it a war. It wasn't a war anymore. It was a reckoning. What was left of the Empire on Earth had either gone underground or barricaded themselves into steel-wrapped cities, artificial bunkers with controlled climates and genetically tuned atmospheres. They weren't trying to conquer anymore. They were just trying to survive. hunted, cornered, and drowning in the same fear they once forced onto others. We gave them no rest, no mercy, no negotiation. We sent bodies back, stacked and burned. Their elite? Hung upside down outside their bunkers with signs carved into their armor in 7 different languages. You thought we were animals. You were right. My squad had grown by then. 45 men and women, all of them hardened by fire and betrayal. Some had been with me since the beginning. Others were barely recognizable beneath their scars and stolen gear. We didn't look like soldiers anymore. We looked like ghosts, walking reminders that Earth was the wrong planet to invade. We didn't wear uniforms, just trophies. Bits of armor, alien bones, shattered helmets. We weren't fighting for a flag. We were fighting for closure. And we were close. Our next mission wasn't a hit. It was a purge. Intel had confirmed that the Empire's last major planetary governor, Archregent Kaloran, was holed up in an old capital site deep in what used to be the Alps. Buried beneath the ice and rock, surrounded by the remains of shattered mountain ranges and nuclear-blasted valleys, was the Empire's final redoubt. A city-sized fortress powered by geothermal vents and guarded by something called the Dread Spire, a structure we hadn't seen before. They built it for one reason: to hold out until reinforcements came from off-world. We weren't going to give them that chance. The assault was planned for weeks, coordinated with other resistance cells from every shattered continent. A full-scale push, not just sabotage and strikes. This time it was war in its truest form. Man versus monster, tooth for tooth, scar for scar. I led the ground force, 6 columns of fighters, each made up of what we now called ash squads, named for what they left behind. Some had homemade flamethrowers, others rode salvaged alien skimmers rigged with explosives. We were suicide wrapped in steel and hate. The approach was hell. Blizzards tore skin, drones blanketed the sky. They knew we were coming. We didn't care. Half of us weren't planning on coming back anyway. This wasn't about surviving. This was about finishing it. We breached the outer wall with orbital scrap. Massive debris from the fallen Empire fleets, converted into kinetic battering rams and shot into the fortress at subsonic speeds. The shockwaves shattered their gates. We flooded in like blood through open wounds. They fought back hard. This wasn't the same Empire force from the early days. These were survivors, too. Desperate. Fanatical. They used chemical bursts, gravity wells, AI-commanded mechs. They tore through our front line. But they couldn't break our will. Because we weren't there to win a battle, we were there to kill a god. The Dread Spire was alive with energy, black metal veins pulsing with crimson light. It rose like a spine from the frozen earth, nearly a mile high. At its peak, we were told, the Archregent waited. Not in fear, in arrogance. They still thought themselves untouchable. That was their final mistake. We fought through floor after floor, each one filled with traps, monsters, and abominations. Half-bred Empire warriors fused with tech and madness. I lost 11 men on the lower levels alone. One of them, Thorn, was burned alive trying to disable a field generator. He screamed the whole time and begged us not to stop him. Because he knew, if we did, it'd all be for nothing. So we kept moving. The climb up the spire was a massacre. Each level darker, hotter, soaked in the stink of fear and death. Empire soldiers weren't defending anymore. They were hiding, praying. Some even tried to surrender. We shot them anyway. We were past forgiveness, past diplomacy. There was only judgment. At the summit, we found the Archregent. He was tall, regal, dressed in ceremonial armor laced with nanofibers and etched with gold. He stood calmly in the center of a control room surrounded by blinking consoles and walls made of polished obsidian. I still remember his eyes. Dead. Cold. Not in fear, but in entitlement. He didn't believe we had the right to stand before him. Didn't believe we could. "You were supposed to fall," he said in perfect, accentless English. "You were designed to fail." I lifted my rifle and shot him in the knee. He collapsed with a grunt. My men fanned out. No one spoke. The silence was thicker than blood. "You invaded," I told him. "You killed our people. You burned our cities. And you still think you're the victim?" He looked up, bleeding, face twisting into something between pride and disgust. "You are chaos incarnate," he said. "You have no order, no unity, just rage." "Exactly." Then I drove my knife into his heart. The spire died with him. Systems failed. Power shut down. Across the planet, empire structures fell into blackout. Their last commander was dead. Their last hope burned. We didn't celebrate. There was nothing left to celebrate. Only a planet to bury. The world didn't cheer when the empire fell. There were no parades, no speeches, no waving flags or fireworks. Just silence. A thick, choking silence that blanketed the ruins like smoke from a fire that had finally burned itself out. We had won. But winning didn't feel like triumph. It felt like standing in the aftermath of a massacre you started, then realizing you were the last one left breathing. The empire was gone. What little remained had gone into hiding or abandoned the planet entirely. Their orbiters had stopped responding. Their tech had shut down. Whatever off-world fleet was watching decided Earth wasn't worth it anymore. Too costly, too bloody, too human. But we were left with the wreckage, with the bodies, with the scars. There were mass graves everywhere, some organized, most not. Entire cities had become burial grounds, bodies layered in rubble, their faces half melted, some unrecognizable even to their own kin. In some places, the stench was so thick it sank into your skin, no matter how long you scrubbed. We didn't rebuild right away. We couldn't. There was nothing to rebuild. No governments, no infrastructure, just scattered factions of survivors, some clinging to the idea of society, others going full feral, turning their backs on civilization altogether. Power was chaos. Territory was violence. Food and clean water were more valuable than bullets. But the worst part? The war hadn't left us. We brought it home with us. The men who survived the spire, the ones who climbed with me, who watched everything die around them, weren't the same when we came back down. We'd seen too much, done too much. We didn't know how to live anymore. We were ghosts. I remember walking through the bones of Berlin weeks later, looking for survivors, for supply caches, maybe even for peace. I found none of it. Just a group of children, barely old enough to speak, surrounding the carcass of an Empire scout drone, bashing it with rocks, laughing, singing some twisted song about break the skull, drink the sparks. They had no idea what peace was. They'd never known it. They were born in fire, and now they lived by it. I tried to help. We all did. But help meant leadership. Leadership meant decisions, and decisions meant power. Power breeds violence, always. Some of my own turned on each other. Factions formed. Old grudges flared up. Gangs that had worked together during the war started carving up land, raiding each other. For resources, they said. But really? It was for pride, for ego, for the addiction of control. That's when I knew we'd lost something deeper than cities and lives. We'd lost our soul. One of my oldest fighters, Creed, pulled me aside one night. We were sitting around a fire, surrounded by the corpses of Empire tech we'd once called gods. "You ever think we went too far?" he asked. I didn't answer right away, because the truth was, yeah, I thought about it every damn day. But I couldn't say it, because then everything we did, everyone we lost, would have been for nothing. So I looked him in the eye and said, "We did what we had to." He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. He killed himself 2 nights later, left no note, just walked into the fire and didn't scream. Others followed. The pressure of peace, of not having something to kill, was too much. We were built for war now, engineered by it, sharpened into blades that didn't know how to stop swinging. And with the Empire gone, we turned inward. I tried to stop it, tried to form a new coalition, not a government, nothing formal, just a council, a way to share power, to avoid another collapse. We called it the Black Table, 13 seats, equal say. By the end of the first month, 4 seats had been assassinated. The rest started wearing body armor to the meetings. We were too fractured, too damaged. And the truth was, too many of us liked the chaos. We'd found purpose in it, identity. The war hadn't broken us. It had shaped us. But there were still moments, small, fragile moments, that made me think something better might still be possible. I met a woman outside the ruins of Florence. She wasn't a fighter, wasn't anyone special, just a doctor. Used to work with Empire captives, patching up prisoners, trying to keep kids alive in the camps. She didn't care about revenge or power. She cared about planting seeds. Literally. She'd started a greenhouse, right in the middle of the rubble. No tech, no fancy machines, just dirt, sunlight, and grit. Tomatoes, potatoes, even a few stubborn apple trees. She called it her silent rebellion. I asked her why she bothered. She just looked at me and said, "Because we have to remember how to live too." I didn't answer her that day, but I kept going back. And every time I did, I left my weapons outside the fence. Not because I trusted her, but because I wanted to. That's what survival had become now. Not rebuilding, not revenge, not glory, but little acts of trust, of hope, even if they didn't last. The winter after the spire fell was the coldest anyone remembered, not just in temperature, but in spirit. It wasn't the kind of cold that crept into your bones. It was the kind that pressed into your chest, weighed down your breath, made the air feel like it was punishing you just for being alive. They said it was from the orbital ash, the remains of the Empire's station still drifting in the upper layers of the atmosphere. Dust and debris choked out the sun. The sky hadn't been blue in months. Everything was gray, the kind of dull, lifeless gray that made it feel like the world had just stopped caring. We had become a species of survivors. That sounds noble. It wasn't. Most days, I'd wake up and wonder if I was going to have to kill someone, not for ideology or strategy, but because they'd stolen food, or medicine, or shot someone's brother. Humanity had splintered into micro-kingdoms, warbands, cults, ragged towns wrapped in barbed wire and paranoia. Trust was a currency more expensive than water. I tried to stay out of it. After the Black Table collapsed, I walked away from leadership, let them fight over the scraps. My war was over, or so I told myself. I spent most of my days outside the old Florence ruins, working with the woman who planted the greenhouse. Her name was Marion. She never told me her last name, and I never asked. We had an unspoken agreement. No pasts, no lies, no stories unless you were drunk or bleeding. She showed me how to care for soil again, how to look after fragile things. At first I was garbage at it. My hands were too rough. I broke stems just by brushing them. But she never scolded me, just nodded and said, "You'll learn." Plants aren't afraid of scars. One afternoon, I asked her why she stayed, why she didn't flee, didn't try to find one of the safer zones in the north. She answered with a question. "What's the point of safety if you can't grow anything in it?" I thought about that a lot. I also started having dreams. Bad ones, not about the war itself. That part was almost easy to accept. The shooting, the screaming, the blood, that was just noise. What haunted me was the silence that followed. The faces of the men who followed me into fire and never came back. The look in Creed's eyes before he walked into the flames. The boy who died calling my name because he thought I could save him. I kept those dreams to myself. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I'm still broken even though we won? We didn't win, not really. We just didn't die. The problem was, neither did everyone else. One night, Marion and I were working under oil lamps, patching a makeshift irrigation pipe, when we heard the trucks. Not hovercraft. Trucks. Old engines, noisy and inefficient, but loud enough to mean only one thing: a convoy. Visitors. I reached for my rifle before I even realized I'd moved. She froze. Expecting anyone? I shook my head. Nobody good announces themselves that loud. She stood and wiped her hands on her jacket, calm as ever. Let me talk first. The trucks rolled in a few minutes later. 3 of them, rusty and reinforced with welded scrap armor. Each one flew a black flag with a silver handprint painted in the center. I knew that symbol. The Iron Flock, a splinter faction from the Black Table days, ex-military types mixed with scavenger gangs, half religious, half mad, believed that Earth's survival was divine punishment, and that only through discipline and purging could we become worthy of the planet we'd taken back. Fanatics! The lead truck stopped 20 yards from the greenhouse. 6 men stepped out. One of them wore a long coat made of stitched-together Empire banners, their symbols scratched out. He smiled like he owned the place. "Peaceful day," he said. "Depends on the visitor," Marion replied, hands visible. He tilted his head, studying her like a scientist studies a rat. "We've heard of this place," he said. "The garden, the healing." His voice dripped with condescension. "We want to offer protection." I stepped forward. "Didn't realize we asked." He turned to me, and I saw the recognition hit his eyes. Not my name, not my face, just the way I stood. The kind of man who didn't bluff. "You were at the spire," he said, voice tightening. "One of the butchers." I didn't correct him. He smiled wider. "Even better." I kept my finger near the trigger. "You're not welcome here." "We can help," he said. "The flock is growing. We've got doctors, power sources, military-grade medicine. All we ask is compliance. Join us. Follow the code. Purge the unworthy." "And who decides who's unworthy?" His grin turned into a sneer. "People like you." I stepped forward. He didn't flinch, not at first, but the men behind him started to shift. They weren't expecting resistance, not here, not from a place that grew tomatoes and patched up broken bones. I let that tension hang in the air like the smell of gunpowder. Then Marion said, "You step foot past that fence, you'll be fertilizer." He looked at her, blinked, then laughed. It wasn't genuine. It was brittle. False. "We'll be back," he said, retreating without turning his back. "And you'll be begging for us when the scorchers arrive." "Let them come," I replied. The trucks left. I didn't lower my rifle for a long time. That night, Marion sat with me under the stars, or what passed for them. We didn't talk, didn't need to. Just passed a bottle back and forth and listened to the wind cut through broken buildings. Eventually, she said, "They won't stop." "I know. They'll come harder next time." I nodded, and then she asked something I wasn't ready for. Would you kill them the same way you killed the Empire? I didn't answer right away. I wanted to say no. I wanted to believe I was past that. But the truth clawed its way out. If I have to. She didn't look angry or scared. Just sad. Like she already knew the answer. The next day, we started building defenses. Nothing obvious, no watchtowers or trenches, just traps, false trails, covered pits, silent alarms made from old motion sensors and bird call devices. Marion made me promise we wouldn't turn it into a fortress, so we made it a snare instead. We trained the kids, quietly. Not how to fight, yet, but how to hide, how to disappear, how to listen for certain sounds. We taught them to move like shadows. Not because we wanted to, but because the world didn't leave us a choice. One of them, a kid named Nico, asked me, "Are we gonna have to kill more monsters?" I looked him in the eye and said, "Maybe." And then, quieter, "But we don't kill unless we have to." He nodded like he understood. But I saw the smile twitch on his lips. They came at dawn, like all cowards do, under the pretense of light, hoping it would wash away the filth of what they were about to do. The iron flock didn't sneak. They marched, bold, armed, confident. They came in numbers, close to 100 men and women armored in rusted plating, masks painted with teeth, rifles scavenged from both Earth and Empire tech. They flew no flag this time. They didn't ask for compliance. They came for blood. We saw them from the ridge. Marion had woken me just before first light. She didn't speak, just put a hand on my shoulder and pointed. I knew it was time. The garden was quiet, too quiet. The children were already in the tunnels. We'd prepared them weeks ago. Marion had insisted on it, said if we were going to build anything real, we had to protect the roots. I wanted to believe her. But today wasn't about roots. It was about rot. I checked my rifle, loaded the last clip, and strapped 2 makeshift grenades to my chest. The others, what few fighters I still had, joined me at the trench line. Just 7 of us. The last remnants of a unit that once burned gods from the sky. I looked into their eyes. Not one of them was afraid. We'd lived too long to be afraid now. Marion joined us. She wore no armor, no gun, just a coat and a steel gaze. I told her to stay in the tunnels. She refused. "If I run now," she said, "they win more than just land." I wanted to argue. But there was no point. Some people weren't meant to hide. Not anymore. The first shot came from their side. A warning. Then a voice, amplified through a megaphone, thick with false civility. "Hand over the doctor and any technology you've scavenged. In exchange, we'll let the children go." I didn't respond. The others didn't move. Another shot. Closer this time, just over our heads. Last chance. I looked at Marion. She didn't blink. So I stood, raised my weapon, and answered with fire. The first wave came fast, like they expected us to break, like they thought the fear of another war would be enough to make us kneel. They forgot we never stopped fighting. The initial clash was pure chaos. Bullets and plasma cut through the cold morning air. Traps exploded. Pits opened. Screams echoed. We hit them hard, harder than they expected. A dozen of them dropped in seconds, caught off guard. But there were too many. By the second wave, they adjusted, moved with discipline. Their shots got cleaner. They started flanking. I took a round to the thigh. Didn't feel it at first, just warmth and pressure. Kept firing. Saw 2 of mine go down, Cruz and Bell. Bell got hit in the neck. Cruz tried to drag her back. Took 1 to the face for his trouble. I didn't stop shooting. Neither did the others. Marion was still behind us, helping reload, tending to wounds, refusing to fall back. She moved like a ghost. Grace under fire. And then I saw him. The bastard from the first convoy. The one in the stitched banner coat. He stood behind the front line, barking orders, directing with a smug look like he'd already won. I broke cover. Didn't think. Just moved. Bullets whizzed by. Dirt kicked up around me. I felt the sting of a graze across my ribs, but didn't slow. Threw the first grenade at his flank, cleared out 2 of his guards, closed the distance while he staggered. He turned. Eyes wide. "You," he said. "Me," I answered, and tackled him to the ground. He fought dirty, knife to the gut, missed by an inch. I slammed my elbow into his face, heard the crunch. He rolled us over, tried to get leverage, but I pulled the pin on the second grenade. We stared at each other. Real quiet. "You won't survive this," he whispered. I smiled. "Don't need to." Then I shoved it in his coat and kicked him back. The explosion sent me flying. I blacked out for a second, maybe more. When I came to, the battlefield was hell. Fires, screams, smoke, the kind that sticks to your soul. The flock was retreating, scattered, broken, leaderless. We'd held them. Barely. I crawled back to the trench. Marion was there. Bleeding, shot through the stomach. I pulled her into my lap, tried to stop the bleeding with my hands, with cloth, with anything. But it was too much. Too fast. She looked up at me, eyes wet but calm. "You saved them," she said. "No," I whispered. "We saved them." She smiled. "Good." Then her hand dropped. And she was gone. I don't remember much after that. They say I wandered into the garden at dawn the next day. Just sat there. Dirt on my face, blood on my hands, staring at the trees she planted, the ones just starting to bloom. They tried to name the place after me. I told them no. Told them if they wanted to remember anything, remember her. The one who chose to plant instead of burn. The one who showed monsters how to be men again. The years blurred together like rain on glass. No more calendars, no more clocks ticking in unison, just the rhythm of sunrises, seasons, and slow, stubborn regrowth. They called it the second quiet. Not peace. Never that. Peace was a word for people who had forgotten what it cost. No, this was something else. A stretch of time where the guns stopped echoing, the fires stopped spreading, and the dead finally outnumbered the killers. I lived through it. Didn't expect to. Didn't even want to. Not at first. But time has a way of dragging even the unwilling forward. And for those of us who had spent years knee-deep in death, living was the last rebellion we had left. Marion's garden became more than a patch of green in a world still dressed in ash. It became a seed of something real. People came from every direction, not because we invited them, but because they had nowhere else left to go. Some brought children, others brought pain. Most brought both. We let them in. Slowly, cautiously, and we built around the roots she planted. No fences, just watchers. No currency, just trade. No laws, just rules scrawled on stone, read aloud every new moon. Protect the weak. Feed the hungry. Bury the dead. And never ever start the fire unless you're ready to burn in it. They say I'm the one who wrote them. I didn't. Those words were hers. I just remembered. The kids grew fastest. Not just in height, but in knowledge. They learned from what we were, not just what we taught. Learned how to use weapons, but not crave them. How to hunt, but also how to cook. How to lead, not with threats, but with action. One of them, Nico, took over my patrol routes when my knee gave out. Grew taller than me. Smarter, too. He asked me once, while tightening the string on his bow, Do you think the Empire will ever come back? I didn't lie. Maybe, probably, one day. He nodded. We'll be ready. And he meant it. Not with hate, not with bloodlust, but with eyes wide open. I knew then I could step back. I spent my days by the garden, keeping the weeds at bay, talking to Marion even if she couldn't answer. Her grave was simple. No dates, just a name and a line carved deep into stone. She chose to grow where others burned. People left her gifts, small things, a pendant, a poem, a folded drawing from a child who'd never known her smile, but still felt it in the fruit she helped grow. Sometimes they'd ask me to speak about her. I always said the same thing. She wasn't a saint, she wasn't a hero, she was tired, broken, but she still believed in life. That's more than most of us ever managed. As for me, I stayed in a little shack near the edge of the field. Nothing fancy, just wood, steel, and a cot. I kept my rifle under the bed. Not because I expected trouble, because the world always finds a way to remember what we forgot. And when it does, someone has to stand first. Even now, I dream of the spire, of the screams, the blood, the moments I let rage become God. But sometimes I dream of her, in the garden, laughing, washing dirt from her fingers, telling me that the world is cruel, yes, but only when we forget how to make it kind. I wake up cold after those dreams. Not afraid, just aware of how close we came, of how far we still have to go. The settlement grew, became something people whispered about on the trade routes. They called it Marion's Field, said the crops grew better there, said it was blessed. It wasn't. It was just watered with enough blood to make the soil remember. Still, I kept walking the borders, kept listening for engines in the distance, kept teaching the kids how to see shadows before they moved. One night Nico came to me, jaw tight, fists shaking. "We caught someone," he said. I followed him. They had a prisoner, young, scared, wearing armor shaped from old Empire tech. Said he came from a bunker that survived the purge, said they'd rebuilt, said more were coming. He wasn't lying. You can smell lies. This kid stank of truth. The council, if you could call it that, wanted to exile him. Some wanted to kill him. I sat with him, asked him why he came. He looked me in the eyes and said, because I wanted to see if the stories were real, that the butcher of the spire became a farmer. I didn't answer. Not for a while. Just stared out the window at the garden she left behind. Then I looked back at him and said, "No." The butcher died when she did. The rest of us are just trying not to wake him up again. He stayed. Earned his place. Still jumps at thunder. Still flinches when someone raises their voice. But he plants the straightest rose I've ever seen. Time kept moving. My hands grew slower. My eyes dimmer, my body older. But the fire stayed. Just quiet now, like coals waiting for a spark. They'll come again one day, not the flock, not scavengers. Something bigger, stronger, maybe not aliens, maybe not outsiders. Maybe it'll be us, all over again, because war doesn't die. It sleeps, and the only thing that stops it from waking up again is a generation willing to build something louder than hate. That's why I stayed. Not because I had to, but because someone has to remember. Someone has to bury the old gods in silence and teach the children how to grow with their hands, not their fists. So that if the monsters come again, they'll find not just resistance, they'll find something worth saving. And this time, we won't burn everything just to prove we could.